Hey ratbags, it's Jade with another top 5. Today it's about the optional bosses, the creatures that made you scream, the ones that you never want to face again. Which one of the bosses in Grounded do you rate as the most memorable, your favourite? I'm not simply just going to run down what you guys voted, nearly 5,000 of you. I'm also going to give some top tips about taking on the bosses and info that you might not realise. So let's go, top 5 Grounded optional bosses voted by you, the Grounded community. Number 5, with only 3% of the vote of nearly 5,000 votes total, is the Was Queen. Maybe because it's the most recent, a lot of you guys simply haven't actually had a chance to fight it yet. Or maybe it's the Brony box. While it's cool and it's got some nice features, it's relatively short as a dungeon that you have to go through before taking on the boss. Excited as we were for a brand new biome to be added post 1.0 release, it maybe felt like it was just a little bit underwhelming compared to some of the other dungeons we've faced late game. Or simply put, in terms of memorability, you've already faced some of the greatest boss fights in Grounded, and this was good, but maybe just not good enough. What I really liked about this was, obviously it was our first proper flying boss fight, or at least for a while anyway. Like sure, the Queen does land occasionally and you can get some really good solid hits in, but mostly it's about having range good combat here, stocking up on your anti-poison potions like the Waspidote, and making sure you take care of any of her minions when she summons them. I thought this boss fight was amazing when it launched. I tried it out as soon as possible, streamed it live, and I just thought it was crazily OP. They did nerf it a little bit, as they often do, and it's in about, I would say, the right spot right now. Although if there's 3 or 4 players, try and take it down is incredibly more tough, with more drones I do believe spawning, and obviously a much greater health pool. That poison just ticks down, and eventually you might run out of your antidotes. She does crazy damage with her poison bomb Nova, so you really have to kind of avoid it as best you can, but it's so hard when you see these horrible balls coming towards you. Absolutely, the Black Ox crossbow with salt arrows is going to be your best thing to take it on. Otherwise, if you're insisting on a melee build, you probably want to go something generic, so that means clubs. Either the Broodmother club, maybe something like the Mint Mace. They're all going to be one of the best shots maybe. I personally still like fast moving weapons like daggers or a sword, especially anything that might do a bit of bleed damage. Of course, that's what the Wasp can do to you. It inflicts damage that reduces your resistance. She can take away your ability to heal as efficiently, make you super tired, and even stop you from perfect blocking. Never ever try and use poison weapons or anything toxic, as she's more immune against poison and gas than many of the other kind of traits. Apart from the infected Broodmother, she's got the biggest health pool out of all the other bosses. If that wasn't bad enough, she's also one of the hardest to stun, again second only to the infected Broodmother in terms of stunning it. It's got one of the highest values, 375 compared to some of the others where it's in the 200 range. But with the combination of all B armor, so you've got air superiority, giving more stun damage with every shot, as well as your shield with perfect blocking, adding more stun damage, it could be a really good option, and that's why you should really maybe go for that armor set. Although again, I really like the cloth set too. The moth set inflicts bleeding damage, and I think it does a good job when she's flying around while you're running away from the bombs, you're still doing some effective damage. A formidable opponent, maybe slightly too annoying with its flying ability to make it one of our favourites and most memorable, but certainly the way the ground shakes with the nest is absolutely thrilling, and I still think it's definitely worth your time taking out, as you do get some pretty cool rewards, especially if you are a ranged class. The Bard's Tutor, of course, it allows you to be protected against the wasps, as they'll think you're their friend. And the Bard's Bow, in combination with the mutation that you get from the Queen, really does make short work of a lot of enemies, applying all sorts of random debuffs on them as you hit with each shot. Last thing I will say in defense of the Was Queen, it's relatively easy to go ahead and fight her or summon her. Yeah, sure, you have to gain access to the box itself, which means taking on the Was Nest, but its summon item is made out of just common garden bug parts. Like sure, tiger mosquitoes ain't no joke, but you only need one of the actual needles, and the rest of the stuff is relatively cheap and easy to get as well. But all that aside, ultimately you guys voted it where it is, number 5. Director Schmechter, we meet again. Well, actually for the first time. This is kind of teased throughout the story that there's some nefarious entity really in major control, and we're going to hopefully get our revenge against him. It is an optional boss, but I do encourage you to go and take care of this one to get the best ending in Grounded. You can only take this one on when you've gone and rescued Wendell, so it is a very late game optional boss still. Some might harshly just call him a reskinned assistant manager, but I think he's got his own charms, especially the arena itself and combat. I personally love this fight. It was infuriating, definitely one of the most challenging I've experienced. Even getting to the boss fight is challenging enough, either having to build or do some pretty decent parkour and jumping around to get on top of the actual castle set itself. But 4th place with 9% of the vote, that's what you guys voted. Another chunky boy, 4,000 health, that's only 1,000 less than the Was Queen. Its only real weakness is busting, but obviously sour too, so always make sure you do sour on your tier 3 hammer, that's my top tip. And for once, generic's not going to help you as much, as it's got a 50% resistance against generic damage. Don't bother using poison gas or any bleed weapons on this guy, he's a robot of course. And you're still going to need protection against poison yourself due to the little Orb Weaver Juniors that all spawn. Ultimately, he's not too bad facing off against him on your own. 280 stun, so it's high, but not as high as the Was. He does fire an incredible amount of these static shots, which you of course can block. Sometimes the rebound from them behind you is what really does you in, and then of course the big lasers that he's about to summon once he gets to nearly the halfway mark. This is where I literally nearly rage quit and really had a hard time when I first fought him, again due to him being a little bit too overpowered. But I've come to actually love the challenge of it. I think it makes it more unique, and yes, it is an upgraded assistant manager fight, all in but name. But there's definitely some hacks, either standing underneath the screen or right in the corner. Sadly you can't just cheese in the doorway anymore, the devs have put an invisible barrier there. It's actually the poison damage accumulating from some of the Orb Weavers and the attacks that really got me the first maybe few times as well. But now we've got Waspidotes as well as Mithridism, this shouldn't really be much of a problem if you've taken out some wasps. As mentioned, he takes a huge amount of damage from sour, maybe not so much fresh, and definitely don't use spicy. Chopping and stabbing are also added to that list of no-nos really. The pinch whacker could be a good one to help hopefully stun it if you do pull off an electric shot. But yeah, it's all about sour with this guy. Get up close and personal, don't use range as he can inflict a debuff that helps or stops reducing some of that damage. And pretend you are Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, avoiding all the lasers that do carry on going after you've killed him for a while. His little quips, the extra bit of story you get, and of course the major part of getting the best ending in Grounded, it makes it almost absolutely a must boss fight rather than optional. But as we had faced the assistant manager and so many people really don't like that one, I can see why some of you guys really don't think this is as memorable. Or maybe you didn't even realise there was a boss fight here yet. Of course it does give you access to now go ahead and craft the supreme upgrades, so that's another good reason you should be taking it on earlier. And I absolutely love the sour battle axe, so for me this is always a boss I will always take on before finishing a run. Deep in the bowels of the earth lurks a monster so terrifying, so ferocious, that it took me 27 attempts to kill it the first time. I'm not even joking, that's exactly how many attempts it took to finally defeat the infected Broodmother. With only 15% of the vote, you guys were absolutely crying when this got added. It was impossible, it's too tough, I can't cheese with my ranged arrows. Shut up, you're gonna get down and dirty, you're gonna get up close, you're gonna make sure you're the perfect parry king or queen, or other non-binary royalty. You can see some of the stats flashing up. Yes, I'll reuse some of my previous videos. It simply is one of the toughest creatures in Grounded. It absolutely is. Definitely one of the most challenging if you're not very good at perfect blocking. You really got to time it well. Yes, you can go in with more meaty stuff like roly-poly armor for sure and just pray that you've got enough heals. But oh my gosh, this is nightmare fuel for sure. It dies not once but twice before you can actually vanquish it the third time. 11,000 health total, double, more than double what the Was Queen has. Forget trying to stun this one as well. You're going to be looking at 600 threshold for the first phase, and then it just gets worse and worse for each phase after. Not content with adding the hardest boss in Grounded or creature, they also went and made it even more challenging. If you drink the slurp water, you do gain additional bonuses and buffs. Yes, drink that horrible water that is there on the ground and you get a 50% decrease in exhaustion, so you won't be as tired, and you will get a 15% increase in critical hit. However, you're going to take double the amount of damage that you normally would take, and you're going to have a big chunk of your block gauge removed. To me, it's an extra badge of honour in taking on one of the toughest creatures by doing it this method. I love this guy. Everyone complained it was too hard, but ultimately it is like a love letter to the proest of pros of Grounded. It's the last boss really that you can take on, since it needs so many of the other boss parts. The rewards are pretty insane though if you do want to take it on. Obviously getting the mouldy bomb, which means you'll no longer have to worry pretty much about making any future ones. And the infected Broodmother set looks pretty badass. For sure, in obviously all the boss encounters, this is definitely up there in the most memorable for me now. Just the pain and crying that I had to endure in trying to defeat it the first time. The devs have removed some of the cheese spots that you could maybe have a bit of an easier time, and the best advice now is to fight it on the edges of the arena just to avoid some of its cluster bombs. But honestly, when it died that first time and I couldn't loot it, I was like, what's going on here? The game's glitched, it's bugged. You saw all your debuffs that were still attached to you. They stay there permanently, some of these, until the end of the fight completely, nerfing your healing ability and how much damage you take. And then it awakes with a sickening twitch of its legs, and they're about to go all through it again, but now even more tougher. Fresh weapons are a must, and I do believe in having fast moving stuff. Even if it seems a bit counterintuitive with poison, since she's pretty resistant to it, the Widow Dagger is pretty fast and will do a lot of damage on its own anyway. Whatever you do, do not use any explosive weapons of course, because she's pretty much immune. In fact, more than that, it'll heal her if she takes any explosive damage. And since she's obviously weak against fresh, don't ever use spicy weapons either, and she's 75% resistant against it. She's got so many different attacks, so many ways that she can do damage to you. The pounce just gets faster and faster by stage 3, where it becomes almost impossible to keep blocking. You've got to have a fully equipped shield, or make sure all of your stuff is well repaired, and hope that you can block it as many times as possible, using maybe trinkets and stuff that are going to give you more repairs for your shield or stop it from breaking. She is resistant against a lot of bleed effects, but maybe still worth having a pop, as you are still going to take some bleeding damage off of her while using something like the Toenail Scimitar. Honestly, it's super terrifying. The music kicks in, the explosions around you, the darkness of it all, and then to top it all off, she then goes and summons some infected gnats. No, I'm only joking, they actually pretty much die as soon as they're spawned. More dangerous is the egg sacs that she drops when these explode, doing a huge amount of damage to you. I really want you guys to tell me if you've beat this, how many times did it take legit, honestly, and when you did it, as she again has had a few nerfs and changes since its initial release. I personally would rate this as even maybe top 3 encounters. For me, I'll show you the rundown what I think at the very end of the video, but I definitely think this is one of the most memorable boss fights for sure. You're going to have to kit it a good few times to become an ultimate demolitions expert and get all the armour as well as the blaster of the matriarch, all but replacing the need for a hammer or having bombs in your inventory again, although there are still a couple resources it can't actually destroy. I'm hoping they change that in the future, as it seems a good counter reward to the Sour Battle Axe, which can also obviously chop anything needing chopping. While being a formidable weapon, the blaster is definitely one of them. It just takes a bit of a while to get used to its trajectory as you throw it. Some great rewards, but absolutely a pain in the butt to go ahead and get. The toughest boss in Grounded isn't your favourite, surprisingly. In fact, it's not even close. In number 2, with 21% of the vote, it is the Mantis. The speculation and hype generated pretty much by me as first revealing and leaking that a Mantis was going to be a boss fight in the future was really there. And then once 1.0 hit and we saw that it was coming, in a few little teasers beforehand, we knew we was in for the fight of our lives. The Mantis is a tough creature, absolutely fast moving. It's like a ninja the way it goes across its arena. So you have to be quick as well, using also the trunk to maybe negate some of its wide big pounces. No judgment from me on this one, using range is a totally legit actual way to defeat it. Although she still has some sort of weaknesses to stun locks, you can get in a good few hits with a fast moving weapon. But she is also pretty susceptible to stun damage, as having one of the lower thresholds compared to some of the others. So definitely worth thinking about generic or anything that's going to do a lot of stun. It's really weak against salty, so make sure anything like that it has got it on, and avoid spicy. Sour weapons, particularly the sour staff, might not be such a bad idea also. But relatively, as like some of the other bosses, it doesn't have some extreme resistances, so you could go ahead and use explosives, slashing or stabbing, or even busting, but they are going to have 50% less effectiveness. A tier 3 salty max upgraded axe will do a really great job, and again a widow dagger, despite having some resistance against poison, the fast moving nature of it, especially if you've got salty on it, will do a huge amount of damage. It's a powerful ground attacks there, really do a huge amount, and that's what can wipe you out if you're not prepared or fully defending. Get caught in the Mantis's scream and it's gonna make you more exhausted, and it's got some powerful bleed effects as well. As long as you can stand the screen shaking, you can get up close and personal with this one and just keep wading and hoping to stun it, then move to a fast moving weapon, or like I said, go ham with a dagger, with the widow dagger and salty, and do a lot more damage that way. You can also take a moment and a breather to run around the actual trunk and hopefully heal yourself up. I think this has got the number 2 spot, like I said, because of the build up, because we'd seen it leaked and previewed and stuff. It really was just a case of maybe not being super surprised, but just so happy that we were indeed going to be fighting a Mantis. Everyone assumed that the Mantis would be too large for us, but they came up with a good solution. The Orchid Mantis is super tiny. You do need to craft the actual summons using other boss parts for this one though, so there is definitely that kind of gating of it. And the Mantis armor is maybe not as popular as it used to be, especially now they've made some changes to it. It definitely isn't something that I see a lot of players repping or talking about as much. But certainly the Scythe is still a great weapon and a great reward. But perhaps its best reward is the Apex Predator mutation, which when using boss weapons unleashes extra bonuses and damage abilities. Did you race to take on the Mantis when it first got added, or was you more keen on finishing the story? Let me know. But now, of course, number 1 with 52% of the vote, it is the Broodmother, aka the Bread Mother. Little Ark Survival Evolved ratbag community joke there for me. I saw the comments on the poll stating that some of you guys surely haven't even got past this creature, as you would have voted so many of the other bosses as your number 1 experience. But I think a lot of you forgetting that first time feel. When this got added before this, we didn't really have too much to really think about. We had the assistant manager and that was pretty much it in terms of a really great boss fight. And most people were annoyed by that one with its lasers and stuff. So to see the Broodmother revamped, going from being just a wolf spider version on the Frisbee to now being its fully fleshed model with all unique attacks and so many cool unique things, I think this is absolutely one of the most thrilling boss fights going. The way it hangs down on its web as it falls down, the gnarly red spikes on its back. Again, a pretty challenging boss fight depending on where you are in the game obviously, and when you're going to be taking it on. The battle music kicks in, the atmosphere is great with this purpose built arena and showed the sign of things to come, how the template would go for all following boss fights. It makes some of the best weapons in the game in the Broodmother Club, and of course the Mask of the Mother Demon, and now we've got a full set. You can now wear the full Broodmother armor set if you go and defeat it a good few times. I personally think the latest update, where they revamped even more the combat with the Broodmother, has made it more difficult, and that's a good thing. There's just so many more reasons now to also go and take it on to get that full armor set, which would help you create even more of the ultimate poison build. This should be the first boss that you really take on in terms of optional ones. It's got the lowest health pool out of most of them. You can indeed use stun quite a lot on it also to get extra attacks. You just got to be more mindful of some of its mobs that it adds, and of course making sure you're mitigating the poison effects. She's still good as gold in terms of being weak against spicy, so the katana's always going to be your best bet. And try to avoid things like fresh and salty damage. Any kind of sword is always going to be good as it still takes more damage against slashing, but she's only 25% weak against busting or chopping if you really want to use something like that. I would say though explosives and stabbings are probably the worst that you could use at 50% damage reduction. And yeah, it goes without saying that your poison build is pretty useless here. Her poison build-ups on you, especially with some of the Allweaver Juniors also inflicting it, does mean that you will hopefully need to get Mithridism equipped to go and kill as many of the wolf spiders as possible till it triggers. But apart from avoiding a scream, which reduces your attack damage, this isn't exactly the one that you need to worry about in terms of statuses and effects. If she pounces on you, she can reduce your perfect block, but otherwise, the Broodmother is obviously still one of the easiest boss fights going nowadays. I would have it as number 1, I'd have the Infected Broodmother as number 2, Schmector as number 3, the Mantis at number 4, and the Wasp fight as, yeah, probably number 5. And that's it, another community vote done and dusted. What do you guys want me to do next? Let me know in the comment section. Should we take a look at the best weapons once more now that you've had more time with everything in 1.0? We've already done the armor, maybe mutations or trinkets. As always, I want your opinions and comments. Let me know and I'll see you ratbags for more soon.